parts of New England are just starting to clean up after a violent storm today, including a rare tornado in Revere, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. On the other side of the country, wildfires forced hundreds of people from their homes, and there was a deadly lightning strike on a Southern California beach. We have a series of reports on the extreme weather, beginning with Vicente Arenas.
Oh my God!
This was the first time a tornado had touched down in this part of Massachusetts since record-keeping began in 1950.
Look at the trees, they all broke!
Winds blew more than 111 miles per hour here. Dozens of trees were knocked down and streets were flooded. Derek Castle lost the roof to his house.
The winds pretty much just picked up out of nowhere. It just kind of went crazy. The winds were just all over the place.
The same system destroyed 10 homes in eastern Tennessee, where the storm dumped hail and caused power lines to explode. And wind gusts reaching 70 miles per hour knocked out electricity for 200,000 homes near Detroit.
Well, with efforts to work out a ceasefire going nowhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned his country today to prepare for a, quote, prolonged conflict in Gaza. In nearly 3 weeks of fighting, more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed, the vast majority civilians. 51 Israelis have died, all but 3 were soldiers. Don Daler begins our coverage tonight in Tel Aviv.
Mortar fire coming from Gaza today killed 5 Israeli soldiers and wounded several more. The IDF says its soldiers also battled militants who infiltrated Israel through one of Hamas's infamous tunnels like this one. Israel's prime minister warned the war would not be over while that threat remained. We will not stop without eliminating all terror tunnels, he says. The only goal of the tunnels is to kill our families and children, and this was made clear again today. 4 hours later, explosive projectiles hit a playground in Gaza, killing 10, and Gaza City's main hospital. No one at the hospital was injured. But within minutes, the Israeli Defense Force released this statement. A short while ago, Al-Shifa Hospital was struck by a failed rocket attack launched by Gaza terror organizations. Over the weekend, the IDF also blamed Hamas for the deaths of 16 people in a UN-operated school. The Israelis pointed to this undated video they say proves the courtyard was empty when a single IDF mortar hit, contradicting numerous eyewitnesses. And Hamas also upped the ante on its aerial assault. Earlier today, it launched several longer-range rockets well into Israel, as far north as Haifa, which is 100 miles from Gaza. And James, there are now sounds of heavy fighting in northern Gaza.
Don Daler in Tel Aviv, thank you. Israel and Hamas are once again blaming each other for that deadly explosion in a Gaza park. But there is no mistaking who is suffering. Barry Peterson is in Gaza, and we caution you, some of what you're about to see is graphic.
Outside the morgue, last goodbyes. Other parents hoped, begged that their children had survived, but many did not. Inside, 2 boys side by side as they had been playing. And here, Jamal Eliad. His father, Saleh, is a driver for CBS News. This was his family day off. Jamal was 10. He liked soccer. His smile, winsome. Some children were playing with toy guns in the cool of the afternoon. The round came in here. You can still see it smoldering hours later. Right here, there was a man selling chips and snacks to the kids. And over here, you can't even see it anymore, was a swing set where the kids were playing. From the morgue, oh God, God, Saleh said. Friends and family brought Jamal home. It was too much for Jamal's mother, Anwar. Too much for grandmother, Aziz. All afternoon, there were funeral processions, one after another after another. This one was for Jamal. Some children couldn't even watch as their friends went by. At the mosque, prayers for small bodies. Saleh began today as the proud father of a charming, skinny 10-year-old son. Tonight, there is grief and one terrible thing more, that when a parent loses a child, the tears will never end.
The FAA proposed a $12 million fine today against Southwest Airlines. That would be the second biggest ever for an airline. Transportation correspondent Jeff Begays tells us the issue is safety.
Today, the FAA accused Southwest Airlines of failing to follow procedure when it repaired 44 Boeing 737s beginning in 2006. The FAA says Southwest then put the planes back into service, carrying passengers on another 30,000 flights before getting FAA approval. According to documents we obtained, the repairs were supposed to address the cracking of fuselage lap joints, which could result in sudden decompression of the aircraft, something that could be catastrophic in flight. 3 years ago, Southwest grounded its entire fleet of 737s after one of the jets made an emergency landing during a flight from Phoenix to Sacramento. A nearly 5-foot hole in the plane's fuselage led to a sudden drop in cabin pressure. Southwest has faced FAA penalties before. In 2009, it agreed to pay a penalty of $7.5 million for not properly inspecting dozens of planes. In response to today's $12 million proposed fine, the company said the repairs were made years ago, and the FAA's action does not affect aircraft currently being operated by Southwest Airlines. Safety is paramount, and we always strive for full compliance.
Today, the FBI arrested the man it believes sent out hundreds of letters that contained a suspicious white powder. Bob Orr tells us agents spent years tracking down the suspect.
On the eve of this year's Super Bowl, hotels near New Jersey's MetLife Stadium received threatening letters filled with white powder. Econo Lodge manager Ilam Nayak opened one of them.
Powder just came out of the envelope, and I was a little bit suspicious and a little bit worried at the same time.
The FBI had seen the same threat many times before. Since 2008, more than 500 nearly identical white powder envelopes had been sent to schools, businesses, and government offices across 48 states and the District of Columbia. The mailings, also sent to U.S. embassies around the world, frequently contained the same disjointed rant. Al-Qaeda back, the letters warned. Special thing for you. What the hell, where are you, Scooby-Doo? Internal Affairs, FBI. None of the letters contained any actual toxins, but all shared a common link. They were mailed from the area around Dallas, Texas. And that's where the FBI today arrested Han Min Jeon. Newly released court papers say evidence collected from Jeon's computer and trash link him to the hoax mailings. And a motive might be found in police records revealing Jeon has had a long-running grievance with federal law enforcement. In 2002, Jeon told police he heard voices in his head, adding the FBI, DEA, ATF, and police were after him and beaming radar into his body.
This bill makes certain that we address the immediate crisis of veterans being forced onto long waiting lines for health care. It strengthens the VA so that it will be able to hire the doctors, nurses, and other medical personnel it needs so that we can put a permanent end to long waiting lists. It addresses the very serious problems of accountability and makes certain that dishonest and incompetent senior officials at the VA do not remain employed there. And in addition, it provides some other significant benefits for veterans and their families.
We have been working on this diligently from the days that this has passed both bodies. The fact that there had been little action or movement for a long period of time, I think, was exaggerated. Senator Sanders and I, among other members of the conference committees, have worked very diligently to try to bring this into closure before we left for the August recess. And that has always been the deadline that we had set to be able to get this bill passed by both houses before we went home.
The late, great Maya Angelou once said, "A bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song." Each of the men and women that we honor today has a song, literally in some cases. For others, it's a talent or a drive or a passion that they just had to share with the world. I told Linda Ronstadt I had a little crush on her back in the day. And I know all of you have been touched similarly by these amazing people. So we are very grateful to you.
Today, we are continuing to work toward establishing an unconditional humanitarian ceasefire, one that could honor Eid, which begins now, and that will stop the fighting, allow desperately needed food and medicine and other supplies into Gaza, and enable Israel to address the threat which we fully understand and which is real, the threat posed by tunnel attacks, and to be able to do so without having to resort to combat. That is what could come from a ceasefire. We believe the momentum generated by a humanitarian ceasefire is the best way to be able to begin to negotiate and find out if you can put in place a sustainable ceasefire. We also believe that any process to resolve the crisis in Gaza in a lasting and meaningful way must lead to the disarmament of Hamas and all terrorist groups. And we will work closely with Israel and regional partners and the international community in support of this goal.
Now to that lightning strike in Southern California. It happened at Venice Beach yesterday during a thunderstorm that came without warning. The beach was crowded. One man was killed. Terry Okita is there.
This video was taken moments after the lightning bolt hit. The electricity surged through the salt water, injuring 7 swimmers and killing college student Nick Fagnano. Lifeguards began pulling people from the water and performing CPR on some of the victims. Joe Duro was on the beach.
And I looked up and there was this giant bolt of lightning just shooting across the sky.
As many as 20,000 people were on Venice Beach. Some said they could feel a jolt of electricity as they scattered from the sand. There was little warning on a day when skies were mostly clear. Paul Dion was body surfing when the lightning hit. He blacked out in the ocean.
This side of my face was all numb afterwards.
So then do you feel lucky to be alive?
I do feel lucky to be alive.
In Northern California, hot, dry weather continues to feed 2 major wildfires. John Blackstone has the latest on the battle to stop them.
A wildfire burning in Yosemite National Park grew to 2,600 acres today. Some 500 firefighters, along with air tankers and helicopters, have been battling the fire since Saturday. 100 miles north of Yosemite, another fire has burned across nearly 4,000 acres in the Sierra Nevada foothills, destroying at least 13 homes. The smoky fire grew quickly in dry forest and grassland, but 2,000 firefighters from across the state now have it largely contained. Ron Oatman is with CAL FIRE.
So the situation appears good now, but you can't relax.
There's still a lot of work to be done. No flame that's being seen or very little fire activity. That's great news. But again, all it's going to take is one ember outside the uncontained part of the line.
So far this fire season, wildfires have burned across more than 129 square miles here in California. That's only slightly above average, but in the third year of severe drought here, James, the fire risk remains extreme.
Welcome to special coverage of the ongoing war on the Gaza Strip. As we speak, the bombs continue to fall on the Gaza Strip. The number of the dead stands at least 1,080, with nearly 6,500 people injured, women, children bearing the brunt of this. Of course, now we earlier saw Gaza's main hospital and a playground being targeted by shells. As you can see, those live images coming out of the Gaza Strip. The Strip is continuing to burn as the bombs continue to fall. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that this onslaught on the Gaza Strip is going to continue until Israel achieves its goals there. Now, let's not forget, this war has caused the deaths of over 240 children since July the 8th. That number increasing by the minute. Let's speak to our correspondent Akram Al-Satari, who's standing by in Gaza with the very latest. Now, Akram, we're getting these latest images coming out of Gaza. The bombs are falling. There's a specific area that's on fire from what it seems. Plumes of smoke can be seen rising. Can you tell us a bit more?
Well, the tension is rising. The Israeli occupation forces are intensifying their attacks against the Gaza Strip at large and Gaza City in particular. We have been hearing reports. You have just said that the number of children killed ever since this escalation started is 240, and I can assure you now that the number has just mounted to 242 after 2 children were killed in Rafah when their home was targeted by the Israeli unmanned drones. As you can see in the background now, we see illumination rounds being thrown by the Israeli unmanned drones, and we could hear a continuous bombardment from the 4 directions of the Gaza Strip, and we actually saw the shrapnels falling around us in this very specific area. This is a signal of that the anger of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is being translated into large-scale military activities against the people of Gaza, and is also likely to harvest more lives of the civilians, of the women and of the children of the Gaza Strip. In the past 10 minutes, we could hear more than 30 airstrikes, 30 ground explosions caused by the artillery fire, and we could also the Israeli battleships, the gunboats, targeting the harbor area, pouring tens of shells into the area. And as you can hear now, this is one more big explosion that is targeting the Gaza City. The situation is dire, and you can see one more now. We could hear that as frequent as every 1 minute we can hear 2 or 3 explosions. And you can see now those illumination rounds, and you could also hear the explosions resulting from the bombs that are being dropped on the homes, the streets and the facilities in the different places of the Gaza Strip.
Okay, let me just remind our viewers, those are live images you're getting coming out of the Gaza Strip. This is a war zone as Israel launches its attacks on the Palestinian population. Our correspondent there saying that this is the wrath of Netanyahu. Now, Akram, speaking of Netanyahu, he did say that this onslaught is going to continue until, quote unquote, all the aims are achieved. How does Israel measure success on the ground? As you also mentioned, that they claim to have destroyed all the tunnels in Shajaiya, yet those tunnels are still there. We've seen Palestinian resistance fighters use them to come and fight back the Israeli military ground forces to protect the Palestinian population.
Well, they claim to have destroyed all the tunnels in Al-Shajaiya neighborhood. They were producing rather promotional materials about their soldiers walking in the tunnels, looking at the equipment and the style that they have been designed with. And after all of that, they were targeted. Their troops were targeted through one of those tunnels that are still functional in the Shaja'iyya neighborhood. They have been talking about measurements, they have been talking about actions, they have been talking about outcomes and end results of their ongoing attack, and they have been achieving nothing except the increased number of civilians killed and the widespread destruction among Palestinians that they also reduced to rubble blocks into Ash-Shaja'iyya, into Khuza'a, into Rafah area, and also in Khan Yunis area. Now they have a challenge, and the Prime Minister was talking, the Israeli Prime Minister was talking, and he was very angry, was talking about a war atmosphere, was talking about the losses sustained by their soldiers, was talking about the necessity to go on with the campaign and to disarm the Palestinian resistance, and he is far from that position. He is not in the position of disarming the Palestinian resistance because of two main reasons. The first one is that after 21 days of intensive fire from the ground, and from the sky, and from the sea, the Palestinian resistance is still capable, is still initiating attacks, and is still causing massive harm, massive destruction to the equipment and to their soldiers. And the second reason is that politically, the Palestinian resistance is still standing on its ground, is still determined to get all their goals achieved. When you compare between the Palestinian resistance and the Israeli regime, you would find out that the Palestinian resistance never compromised their overall goal, their end goal. They said they want the siege to be lifted. They have never changed their statement about that. They said they want the Israeli occupation to withdraw from the land taken over by after the escalation took place, and they never withdraw that or compromise that, and they are still willing to fight till they see the siege lifted and the people living a dignified life. That has not changed yet, and it looks like it's not going to change. And who are changing now is the Egyptians, who proposed the ceasefire, the first draft of the ceasefire, and also the Americans, who are suggesting that they should draft a ceasefire proposal that is not fully corresponding to the needs of the Palestinians. Now, the whole world seems to be changing, while the Palestinian resistance is still standing on its ground firmly and negotiating over the full terms and conditions they stipulated earlier. But look at the Israelis. Benjamin Netanyahu talked at the beginning about the necessity to destroy all the tunnels because they make a strategic threat. And you can now hear a Palestinian rocket flying after a very heavy round of rockets coming from the Israeli side. So this is again a sign of defiance and an indication that the Palestinian resistance is steadfast under the heavy fire, the constant fire that is directed by the Israelis to the infrastructure and to the population at large, and that they are still functional. They can still fight and return fire. Now you can hear two different things at the same time. You can hear, first thing, the Palestinian rocket flying, and you can hear at the same time the unmanned drone that is operated by Israel. So their technology is failing them. They cannot achieve a breakthrough on the ground, and that's why they are resorting to that brutal way of targeting the population, and they are not achieving their goals. This is, and I'm quoting some of the Israeli media who said earlier tonight that the Israeli army is deceiving the audience, is telling them they achieved and they destructed all the tunnels in the Shaja'iyya, and they were targeted by a tunnel in there. So that's now for you to understand the situation on at both ends, and that the Palestinian resistance is achieving, while Israel achieving more killing and destruction and harm to the civilians and to the civilian infrastructures and facilities.
Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari, they're reporting from the backdrop of Israeli shells falling behind him and the sound of Israeli drones flying low. Akram, stay with us on the line. Let me cross over to Manchester. Joining us via Skype is Lauren Booth. She's a journalist and broadcaster. Many thanks for joining us here. Now, first of all, Gaza is without electricity, yet its skyline is illuminated tonight, as it has been in the past many nights for the past 22 days by Israeli shells and bombardment. What do you make of the current situation, first of all?
I think the international community's silence is very telling as the drones and the F-16s and the warships continue to bombard the most densely populated civilian area in the world this evening. I think those who continue to cry out for the UN are mistaken in their loyalty. The UN does not represent human rights. And just as Israel this month has delegitimized itself, it's clear that so has the UN with regards to the Palestinian people. Because right now, Al-Shifa Hospital, the windows are being smashed. This is really the last line of health defense for a smashed and injured population. And Israel is now blatantly breaking in breach of any international laws, contravening the safety of health workers and injured people in their attacks on all the hospitals across Gaza.
Indeed, Ms. Booth, you've been to Gaza on aid missions there. You've seen what the situation was like before this war was incurred upon the people there. It was desperate to begin with, and now adding to insult to injury with this recent war. This is the third war we're seeing on the Gaza Strip. However, what are the goals, do you think, that Israel is after right now? Because Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that this is going to be a protracted war on the Palestinian population of Gaza until the goals of Tel Aviv are not achieved.
I feel happy that we came to a resolution of this conflict, which was created by the imperialist hawks from Miami and the Miami mafias.
I want to single out two persons in Aruba, the judge that ruled my case and the prosecutor. I didn't have the chance to say it there, since my attorneys didn't let me. And if you were to ask me why I think that, it's because I suspect them as they suspected me. I suspect them of having received money to do what they did to me.
Finally tonight, there is no good time for an asteroid to hit. But scientists are now telling us an asteroid hit the Earth at an especially bad time for dinosaurs. Otherwise, they say, they would still be here, and we might not. Here's Dean Reynolds.
66 million years ago was a lousy time to be a dinosaur. Volcanoes seemed to be erupting all the time. Great seas dried up, and the planet's temperature fluctuated wildly. Hard on plants, hard on the dinosaurs that ate the plants, and hard on the dinosaurs that ate the dinosaurs that ate the plants. And if that wasn't bad enough, along came a 6-mile-wide asteroid that smashed into the Earth.
That asteroid happened to hit at the worst possible time for dinosaurs when they were especially vulnerable.
We interviewed paleontologist Steve Brusati, one of the study's authors, at Chicago's Field Museum.
If dinosaurs had a few million years more to recover that diversity they had lost, maybe they would have been better equipped to deal with that asteroid, and maybe they would have survived. Maybe mammals would have not gotten their chance, and maybe we wouldn't be talking here.
But this is no time to gloat. Another study released last week found the Earth is undergoing the 6th mass extinction in its history. Don't look to the heavens to blame for this one. The scientists say it's on us. While human population is rising, climate change and reckless land management have wiped out habitats for other animals and decimated their numbers. The new studies say various species of plants and animals are becoming extinct at least 1,000 times faster than before we showed up.
Dinosaurs tell us that groups that had been dominant for millions and millions of years can suddenly disappear when times go bad. And I think there's a lesson in there for all of us.
If we're willing to learn it from those that were here before us.